Everyone, Kurt Frankham here with Leading Saints. This is another How I Lead interview where I bring in everyday people and simply ask them, how is it that you lead in your calling? And today I get to sit down with Mark Castillo. Now, I think I pronounce his name Castillo because that's like the Spanish version of the name, but we'll talk about that, why it's Castillo. And he's a Sunday school president in Highland, Utah, and he's got unique approaches, thoughts and perspectives on maybe some approaches to running a Sunday school organization in a ward with teacher council meetings, and how do you get the teachers feeling comfortable in teaching, and just the simple tips and tricks that he goes by. I think you'll appreciate this How I Lead interview with Mark Castillo. Hey everyone, we've brought Mark Castillo into the studio today. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Good. Now, we had a lunch a few weeks ago, and as I don't know, there's going to be rumors getting out. If you go to lunch with Kurt, sometimes you end up on his podcast. But here you are, whether you like it or not. So
absolutely, yeah, not a problem. Excited to be here.
Not too far from where I live in Highland, Utah. I'm in American Fork, and you were part of a book club that you guys focused on my Is God Disappointed in Me book. So that was cool. You invited me all to lunch. And I was I pretended like I was a star for a lunch. So it was a lot of fun. Yeah. Now, and it came up that you are a Sunday school president.
Yes,
in your ward. And how long have you been in that role?
Oh, I think like 2.5 years.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, 2.5.
Good amount of time.
Yeah, almost 3 maybe.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Cool. Yeah. Now, just maybe put yourself into context, your background, were you raised in the church? I mean, anything comes to mind?
Sure. Yeah. So, I would say I was kind of raised in the church. I say that because our family was semi-active up until I was about 10 years old. And then a few things happened that actually didn't get baptized when I was 8. And one thing led to another. And when I was about 10, I got the missionary lessons. And so I was like an investigator. And I received the missionary lessons. I was, invited to read and pray about the Book of Mormon. And, I was 10 years old at that time. And I can still remember them inviting me to read about it and pray if it was true or not. And I can still remember, like it was yesterday, kneeling down at my bed, praying about it and receiving an answer that, it was true. And so I was baptized shortly after that. I was born and raised in Hawaii, Honolulu, Hawaii. And
so did all this happen in Hawaii?
Yeah, this all happened in Hawaii. And I remember back then the font was outside. So really? It was behind the tabernacle in Honolulu, if you're familiar with it. And so there was, behind the tabernacle, there was an altar font and, all this, beautiful trees, coconut trees. And I still remember getting, getting baptized. And so at that point, our family slowly became reactivated and came back to church.
And then they had that testimony you were in from. Yeah,
I was in, and, I think, how we, in the Book of Mormon, it always says the word remember, right? Like Helaman 13, it says it like 20 or 30 times, right? And so I've always remembered that, and I think that's one thing Heavenly Father said, okay, I'm not going to make you forget that.
Yeah, that's cool.
So our family got reactivated, and, my dad was a bishop, and so, we got raised in the church since then. After high school, went to BYU, in Provo, and then went on a mission to Venezuela.
Oh wow! Because your last name it's more Latino, right?
Yeah. So Castillo. Actually, an interesting thing about my last name, in Hawaii, we like to say things differently. So I actually pronounce it Castillo. I pronounce the L's.
Okay.
Yeah. my heritage is Filipino Hawaiian. And so in Hawaii, I was just ready. They said the L, so I've always said it.
Oh, interesting.
Except when I was in Venezuela
Yeah, right.
on my mission, I said it, the L's were silent. But yeah, wonderful mission. Loved it there. When I came back, went to BYU, got a degree in business and HR. And so that's what my career has been. I've been doing HR and training and organizational development for about 30 years.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a little bit of background on me.
Yeah.
Like I said, I live in Highland, 3 boys and 1 wife.
Love it. Awesome. Now, you said somebody in your ward kind of gave you the nickname as the Sunday School Zealot. Is that, what's the story behind that?
Yeah. So, just a little background. I was, I don't know if they call it the librarian anymore, the resource person, but
material center.
Yeah,
whatever.
I manned the materials center, the resource center, and so in my mind, I'm thinking, oh, they're putting me out to pasture, and so I was so excited, and I mean, I tried to do my best and handing things out, and manning the TVs and whatnot, and then I got called, to be a Sunday school president, and I don't know. I've always my approach is, well, whatever your calling is, you do your best.
Oh,
and
cool.
so, I think I'd spoken, the beginning of the year, and then, it was come follow me. And so there was no speaker. I think they were looking for a speaker. So I just volunteered. I said, hey, and so when the counselor introduced me, he said something like, and we'll be hearing from Mark. And, I'd never seen a Sunday school president with so much zeal. And so I kind of joked with him after that. So I'm Mark the Zealot, and
Nice.
so anyway, we're just having some fun with it, but that's how, that's how I got that nickname.
But you're passionate about doing what you're asked and making the most of it. I imagine, right?
Yeah. And, I'm grateful for it. If I'm being honest, I love teaching. I do it in my day job. I do it in my side gig. And, especially with, I guess I would trace that back to, I'm an old guy. President Kimball was the president when I was a youth on my mission. And, I'd read somewhere that he read the Book of Mormon at this time when he was quoted 36 times. And, he would read it kind of cover to cover was his preferred method. And that just kind of struck me. So about 15 years ago, I thought, that's, I like many, I study better at some times than others. And I thought, I'm going to try president. And so since then, I've read the Book of Mormon 25 times in the last 15 years. And I don't say that to brag, but it's honestly been one of the most impactful things. I think that's made me a better husband, father, son, friend, employee than, spending those 20 minutes every morning, as part of my routine, reading the Book of Mormon. And so, yeah, I mean, I think that's, that's kind of been my approach. And I've tried to take that enthusiasm, as the president and, try a few different things, to get people, excited about the scriptures.
Yeah. So just for fun, I want to go back to your time as the ward librarian, material center director or something. Give it a good strong title. Any tips or tricks that you'd give for those that are manning the material center or anything?
Just kind of being there and, making sure, and look, you'll get the primary teacher or someone come in and, I need this, and just making sure it's there, whether it's paper or, the pictures and, just making sure it's there. And, at least at our chapel, which has 3 or 4 wards, the lost and found box just kind of grew over the years. So, I just, one of my projects was we just gathered everything, said, hey, everyone, if you got anything here, come and get it. If not, we're going to donate it.
Yeah.
And so, we did. And, it was like, wow, there's, because, stuff just kind of accumulates.
Yeah.
But mainly it was just being there, for people. And, sometimes people will come by and chat and, and just chatting them up. And, I don't know if it made their day or not.
Yeah, it's a good social.
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
Calling,
and just, how you doing? What's going on? How's the family?
Yeah, cool. Love it. So anything you'd say, obviously Highland, Utah County, pretty traditional ward. I mean, anything you would say that's unique about it or pretty typical Utah ward?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty typical. I think, I don't know if it's a bell curve or not, but, you got the spectrum, right? And those that are, really into it, those that are, dedicated and, I mean, everyone's great, but, some people have an easier time or kind of being obedient than others. And, so just trying to be available and, help. And, but yeah, it's a pretty typical ward. One thing I've noticed is that I do think that, COVID was tough and, we've been back full time a few years, but I think there's still some hangover from that. And I don't know if I can put my finger on it, but, we've talked about that as a presidency, but, just saying, hey, just being inclusive and open and just saying, hey, what do you need? How can we help?
Yeah. How would you describe like how you've structured Sunday school in your ward? A couple, gospel doctrine classes or?
Yeah. So we have one gospel doctrine class.
Just one teacher? Or
we have two teachers. So they
once a month they teach?
Yeah. Teach once a month. We have the youth. We have all the different classes for the youth. I think one thing that's gone pretty well is we've been pretty faithful about the teacher council meetings that we do once a quarter. And so again, the church has kind of a format for that, but really giving them a voice. And recent one, we had two newer teachers and they were teaching teens, and their big question was, what do you do about phones?
Oh yeah, it always comes back to the phone.
Yeah, the phone. And so we had a couple, husband and wife, that had been doing it a few years. So they kind of shared their knowledge, say, hey, here's what we do. And, so I think they appreciated that. But, I think the takeaway too was, you try your best and see what sticks, if the spaghetti sticks on the wall. But, it's just kind of trial and error and, also kind of taking those little wins, like, when you see someone, you ask a question or make a comment, that's often like a really big win, And so when we get these council meetings, they kind of share that. And I think it helps give them ideas, but also I think just realizing, hey, we're not alone and it's not easy. I mean, you wish, right? There's a silver bullet or an answer that, okay, this is going to solve it. As this doesn't happen.
Yeah, it's always more complicated.
Yeah, it is. But, you just keep trying. And then, you just hear, then they get these little wins. They hear these comments or they'll think, wow, they're really paying attention, more than you might see in them, know, but it's, some days are better than others, but they just keep plugging along.
Awesome. Anything with teacher council meetings as far as how you structure them, when you do them, anything like the agenda of the class, how you go through that?
Yeah, we try to follow there's the three parts, right? Where you kind of share your concerns, then you do a little teaching, and then you kind of invite them to act on that. I think, in my perspective, I think just kind of giving them a space to talk, I always tell them, look, this isn't a lesson, right? This isn't, like I'm not lecturing here. I'm really more of a facilitator, and they've had some really good, discussions. And but yeah, I think just that first part of just kind of sharing what we've learned, and because it almost always someone else in the room will say, oh, okay, that's a great idea, or I hadn't thought about that. Yeah. And so kind of letting it organically develop, but then, also keeping some structure. And I always, and this is just a personal approach of mine, I like how you kind of invite them to act at the end. And so I always make sure I squeeze that in and try not, because you often run out of time, but my mind, I think, unless this is all great, but if, what's the one thing I'm going to do a little different or a little better? And so I always want to make sure that, that they know that, that there might be one thing I can do better or try different, do differently. And, that's kind of, the other takeaway.
I think that's great advice, because in these council type meetings, the talking is great. Like you said, that sometimes we put too much pressure on, what are we going to do? What's the agenda? But a lot of these teachers just want to talk and share ideas and talk about what's going on. But then to make sure you kind of regroup at the end and say, all right, what are we going to do different? Because time runs out. Oh, great meeting. And then we haven't done anything the next time it rolls around.
Yeah. And even exactly. And even with the instructors, I mean, that's, I'll fill in a few, every now and then in gospel doctrine or even in the youth classes. And I will always end that way. Or, it's always structured where I like to have thoughtful questions throughout, and then I'll invite them, and, I think I learned that from Elder Bednar. I mean, if you notice in his talks, he is always inviting us. Yeah. And so I always, and I think it's, to me, just as I've studied, there's something about that word invite, right? It's an invitation, it's not a, okay, I've got this stick. Yeah, exactly. And so I think the words matter, and if I can at least get them to think that, okay, and I'll often say, like, if I'm teaching, I'm saying, this is the Sabbath day, you got the rest of the day. I invite you to kind of think about what we've talked about here. Is there anything I can do differently, during the week, and, the good thing about that too is, as an instructor, you're also, directing it at yourself, right? Yeah. So like, okay, so what am I, if I'm teaching or sharing this, I better follow through on it as well.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really good. So do you do these during the second hour every quarter, or where do you actually?
Yeah. So we do it during the second hour on the, so I guess would it be the second and fourth? So it'd be when Relief Society and
Elders Quorum.
And so so we'll usually do it on then, and we'll do
And then you invite as many teachers that are available.
Yeah. So what we actually do is we learn this through trial and error, but we kind of did all the adults and youth instructors, and then we also did one for the primary. But now we've actually separated it. So between myself and my two counselors, we'll do one with just the adult instructors, one with the youth instructors, and then one with the primary. We've just found that their needs are a little different, and so we thought it just makes sense to separate them. And so far, we've done that this year. I think it's been beneficial. Little smaller groups, and people have been very open about, hey, what about this? What about that?
Yeah, so, it makes sense to have the similar callings. As I do, I had to consider a couple leadership principles that have really helped you in this role. And maybe we've touched on some of these already, but I want to make sure we don't miss anything. The first one being conversion. Yeah. What comes to mind?
Yeah, it's interesting. We had a lesson yesterday in Elders Quorum about from Elder Bednar about testimony and conversion, which he he gave in 2012, October 2012. So, when I'm thinking about conversion, it's interesting. It made me think of, I actually have his quote here. Knowing that the gospel is true is the essence of testimony. Consistently being true to the gospel is the essence of conversion. We should know the gospel is true and be true to the gospel. And so, it's interesting you asked that question because, this was the lesson yesterday and they sent it out. They notified us in the morning, say, hey, it's what the lesson. So, read it. And so I've been thinking about it, especially conversion. And for me, so I gave that a lot of thought, and I thought, it's just like Elder Bednar says, is, to me, being true to the gospel it's like a daily act, something you have to work on. And, there's that saying, right? Well, you got to put in the work, and it's often hard. And that's really what I thought about. It's just working at it every day. And that's true conversion. And what I liked about this, he talks about testimony, and kind of like testimony is knowing it's true. Conversion is being true to your testimony. And so that's what I think. It is just working at it. And, that's kind of what I've, tried to have our instructor, kind of top of mind, is that, it takes work, and it's more than just a feeling that you have. It's work.
Yeah. And so is that something you're just constantly revisiting with your instructors, make sure that's coming through in their lessons, or how?
Yeah, I think so. And, I think the church has done a good job of kind of structuring kind of the model, and, they've put kind of Christ at the center, right?
Yeah.
And faith in Christ, and just kind of really focusing on that, and that being, it's his gospel. And if we look to him, we'll be blessed. And, and so that's kind of what when we do the little teaching part, the teacher council meeting, we always go back to, to those, kind of the pillars, they call them, of, centered on Christ, and kind of have a discussion, about that.
Love it. Anything else about conversion, or did we cover it pretty well?
Yeah, just, and again, I'm glad you asked that, because I'd been thinking about it because of this lesson. And again, I think I'll just go back to the thought that came to me is it's work.
Yeah.
It's something you have to work at. And, in this lesson, we also talked about maybe those that had fallen away, and those that have, and I think it's, when you look at the testimony piece, you also have to look at the conversion piece, because if you look at it as just constantly working at it, if you don't, it's to me, it's like a muscle, right? If you don't exercise that muscle, it's going to atrophy, right? Or if you don't, your cardio, for example, it's going to go down if you don't, if you're not regularly walking or running or, doing some kind of cardio exercise. So,
yeah, love it. All right. Next principle is embracing your teaching style. Tell me more about that.
Yeah. So, my teaching style, I think, is, and maybe if I can give some context, we have, I think there's all different types of teachers, and so like we have two great gospel doctrine teachers. One is very, they both come with the Spirit. They both teach with the Spirit. One's maybe a little more historical or, kind of fact-based.
Yeah.
And the other is more maybe principle, or what I would say people-based. And, let me be clear. I don't think there's a right or wrong. They just take a little different approach. And so I think, to me, because, sometimes you think, oh, am I doing it right? I'm thinking, look, if you reach just one person, I think that's a win. And so, my point there is that I think there's different styles. My personal style is just with my background. I tend to focus on kind of on the people and the stories, and people have told me, oh, you're a people person. I work in HR and training. Yeah. Okay. So I'm considered a people person, and I know there's a number of ways to approach things, but that's kind of how I approach it. And, I focus on the stories and the effect it's had on the people and how they have felt the Spirit. And so yeah, I would describe it kind of being people and story focused, and, praying that when I do that, I have the Spirit, that, the message is, the impact is, what I intended it to be.
Love it. Love it. Anything else about teaching styles? I mean, obviously just everybody has their style. Embrace it. Don't try and be like the other guy, but anything else that...
Yeah, I just, I try to, everyone has a different style, and, I want people to be themselves, be their authentic selves. But, I think the only other thing is just making sure you ask thoughtful questions, and just getting them to, to think, people to think, because I think that's, in my opinion, that's where the magic happens. And then one last thing is, I try to tell the instructors is, don't be afraid of silence. Like right. If you ask a question, because it's very tempting, give them some time to answer.
Yeah.
And so, because when you're instructing, time just, you think it moves a lot slower than you think, right? And so, even if they have to count, just give people a chance to, to think about it, because I've noticed people eventually will, but, sometimes they have to think about it first.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. Now, then the last principle is choose you this day. What comes from that?
Yeah, I think to me, when you say choose you this day, this, to me, that's, what comes to mind there is putting Heavenly Father first. Mm-hmm. I know personally when I'm praying, that's, I'm always praying for help to do that. And, I'm a simple guy and I've noticed that, when I put Him first, everything falls into place. I mean, it does.
Yeah.
Now, does that mean it's going to always be great or rosy, or absolutely not? But just through my experience, as far as, choosing, as for me and my house, right?
Yeah.
We choose the Lord, and it's never failed me.
Perfect. Love it. Anything like, just as a more like on a more practical level, anything like an app you use, technology you use, the way you meet with your presidency, or anything, just sort of a unique, more practical application?
Yeah. I probably like everyone, I use the church app, a lot.
Mm-hmm. The gospel library. Mm-hmm.
The gospel library. I know at the beginning of the year, we kind of did a little, I took a few minutes and saying, hey, did you know all these features? And we kind of went through that. There's reminders, right, that can say, hey, it's time to read. You can have things just, and I do that too, right? At 9:00 comes and I think, oh, time to read. So, I've probably the gospel app. And again, not so much an app, but, the different podcasts, mm-hmm. that are out there, and, accessing them through YouTube or what have you. I mean, I think there's so many things out there. But yeah, I mean, I think those are just a few of the ones.
Love it.
I use.
Any other point, principle, concept, story that we need to make sure we squeeze in here? How do we do?
I think the only other thing is, going back to teaching, I think, sharing personal stories can have at least that's been my experience, that can have a really big impact as I'm myself or, an instructor shares that. I think there's a depth to a personal story that I think people connect with. And I have found that has been effective as an instructor and then as a participant, when a instructor does that. And, I don't know if it's because they're being vulnerable or we're being vulnerable, or I found that it helps connect and bring the Spirit in.
Perfect. Love it. Well, last question I have for you as you reflect on your time as a leader.
Yeah.
How has being a leader helped you become a better follower of Jesus Christ?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think, the nice thing is, as a leader, you have to kind of by default, you have to put in some work, right? You have to, you have to prepare, you have to study. So it's kind of a structure, that has, helped me, be a better, be a better follower. I mean, and again, like I said earlier, whether it's, father, husband, friend, I just think, being a leader, to me, that means, my opinion, Christ is probably the best example of a leader we have. And so just following his example, reading about him and, studying and, his characteristics and his attributes, kind of is what a leader should do. And, in a sense, that also makes you, I think it's made me a better follower.